Hi everyone, and welcome to StudioJake. I, of course, am your host, Jacob Airy. Be sure to like this video, click that subscribe button, ring the little bell, because we know subscriptions, they're good, but YouTube kind of likes to unsubscribe people from their favorite channels. So ring that little bell, that way you also get notifications. And of course, leave me a comment, let me know how I'm doing. I just wanted to get that out of the way because we are entering a very special comics, cartoons, and coffee. You know, my show where I talk about comics, cartoons, all while enjoying some coffee. All right, so this is actually a new one for comics, cartoons, and coffee. I'm actually going to talk about Star Trek Lower Decks, the second half of the first season. And I did a review of the first 5 episodes. You can go back. Of course, it was more like a rant than a review. And this is going to be kind of the same thing. So I just want to let you know, spoiler alert, because I don't want to intentionally give spoilers away. I don't usually like doing that. But because I just loathe the show with every fiber of my being, I'm going to give a spoiler alert because just in case you're watching this and you're like, oh, I wanted to see how that happened. I don't know why anyone would want to see what happens in this show. It's ridiculous. But here we go. So the next half of the season, I actually kind of found it a little ironic because they spent their time trying to retcon things just from the first 5 episodes. So at Lower Decks, it follows around these characters who are ensigns. So the main one, her name is Mariner, and she's secretly the captain's daughter. She just kind of like walks around, and she's very disrespectful, in your face. She kind of flouts authority, and like, in fact, like taunting it. Then we've got poor Boimler, who is like the object of all her cruelty. I'm just going to call him Ensign Purple Hair because he has purple hair for some reason. Don't know why that is. And then there's these other 2 characters, an engineering ensign and an Orion nurse ensign. I don't really know why they're there. Although I will say, I think this whole series was kind of funny in this, not in the sense that the show itself is, but the last half of the season is spent retconning. So if you'll recall, one of the things I complained about of the first 5 episodes is that they took all things Star Trek, and instead of parodying it, like Harley Quinn, the animated series, or She-Ra, Princess of Power. Oh wait, I forgot that's supposed to be serious. I keep forgetting that. Maybe Thundercrack's Roar is a better example. Anyway, just talking about this show, they do a very poor job. It feels like it was written by people who have never watched a single episode of Star Trek, and they just like throwing in buzzwords because they think that, oh, the fans will feel nostalgic if we throw these in. But it doesn't. It doesn't feel nostalgic at all. It feels like the show is intentionally mocking Star Trek, and that doesn't discontinue from episode 5 to episode 10 to the season finale. In fact, if anything, they ramped it up while trying to apologize to you. So one of the things I complained about in part 1 was they talk about Romulan whiskey. Romulans don't brew whiskey, they brew ale. And it, like I said, it was just a throwaway line at one point that was meant to be a joke. Oh, look, I got Mariner, because she likes to flaunt the rules. She gets drunk on Romulan whiskey and then accidentally stabs poor Ensign Purple Hair. And then though, in the finale, they mention Romulan ale. Oh, wait, I thought in this show it was Romulan whiskey. Please, this is so pathetic that they feel that they have to reboot the show and try to reevaluate the characters before they've even finished season 1. Like in Next Generation and even in Voyager, they did do some soft reboots of the characters and of their careers, just to kind of fill in some gaps. They don't do this with Lower Decks. It's like out and out they're trying to backtrack while at the same time say, hey, we're better than you. And there was this one episode in particular that was just awful, where the engineering ensign, he invents this program called Badgie, and he's like this little animated badge, and he's supposed to help you like with repairs and training, but something goes wrong on the ship, and he starts to malfunction, and so he becomes incredibly violent and like tries to like kill the nurse ensign and the engineering ensign, his creator, who he keeps sadistically calling dad. It's very dumb and ridiculous, and he just like is going about like in their holodeck programs, and he's just killing things, and it has like all this gross bloody humor that you expect to see from something like Army of the Dead, but this is Star Trek. It should be classy, it should be actually funny for one thing, but they just ramp this up, and the characters arcs just don't make sense. So by the end of the first season, Ensign Purplehair, he gets promoted and transferred to the Titan, which of course is Riker. When he gets promoted at the end of Star Trek Nemesis to captain finally, he takes over the Titan. His wife, Deanna Troi, she is on board the ship as well, and he promotes Ensign Purplehair to lieutenant, which makes Mariner angry. And it's really dumb how this pulls off, because all they've done for the first 9 episodes is berate this character. Of course, the white straight male character, right? They just berate him, make fun of him, they humiliate him, and in the few times he actually gets a victory or some sort of accomplishment, it's always undermined. Usually by Mariner, by the way. She is the epitome of a Mary Sue, because everything she does, it comes out perfectly all right. She's just the bestest ever, and it gets to the point where it's kind of annoying. They did this episode where she, of course, takes over Ensign Purplehair. He creates this training program to help him better communicate with the senior officers on the ship that they're originally on, the Cerritos. I think it's funny, the YouTuber Doomcock on Overlord DVD, he calls it the USS Cheetos. I'm not going to do that. I just think it's funny. But anyway, he at one point develops this holodeck program to try to make him better communicate with the senior officers, because he's going to do a Q&A with the captain, and then of course Mariner ruins it, and she turns into a holodeck program where she's like this fascist overlord, and she's going to take over the Cerritos, and she's going to confront her captain, who is also her mother, and they have like this big thing, and then they have this fallout where she actually meets a holographic version of herself, and this version of herself is like a superior Starfleet officer, and they fight, and I commented on Twitter, like, I don't need to see an episode where 2 Mary Sues fight each other. It was just silly and pointless. And what I mean by silly is, like, it's just silly. Like, you don't think, it's not silly like, ah, ha, 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 like you're laughing at a clown. It's like, that was silly. Like, what kind of silly person writes these episodes? And maybe to the writer's credit, maybe they didn't know what they were doing. Maybe they didn't understand Star Trek, and they were just kind of thrust into it. And it's to the point where it's embarrassing. Now, I have been a little more welcoming to Star Trek Discovery than a lot of Trekkers have been, especially if you watch several YouTube channels. Now, I do think that they kind of messed up with a lot of the retcons that they did, and then they had to retcon the retcons. But one of the things I especially liked about season 2 was I thought that they handled Captain Christopher Pike's character very well. They made him a good character, and Anson Mount played him brilliantly. That was really cool, and I'm actually excited for Star Trek Strange New Worlds, because I think that Anson Mount will do a good job as Captain Pike, and I'm looking forward to seeing the Enterprise in that setting. But when it comes to Lower Decks, it sucks all of the oxygen out of the air. It's like one of these things where you're an uncle, and your brother or whoever says, "Hey, would you watch my kid? He's 2." And you, being not having any kids, you naively say, "Okay," and then the kid destroys your house. and then the brother comes over. Isn't he just the bestest ever? And you're like, what? What? And then he's like, oh, you want to come over and watch the game? And normally you would say yes, but you never want to see this freaking Frankenstein child ever again, even though you might want to watch the game with him because he foots the bill for the buffalo wings, you know. But that's how it is with Star Trek Lower Decks. It's like they gave us kind of a mediocre show in Discovery. Picard wasn't really that great. They made it too grim and gritty. But then they give you Anson Mount, and they were like, we're going to give him his own show. We're going to give him a Star Trek show. And you get excited, and then you watch Lower Decks. And you're like, what happened? Where did this go wrong? Maybe people who are millennials or Gen Z, you don't remember growing up watching Star Trek episodes when they were brand new. I was in the generation that saw The Next Generation, that saw Voyager, that saw DS9, that saw Enterprise. All of these amazing shows that brought us these compelling captains and engineers and science. It was high science fiction. The way the writers write, it's up there. It's peak science fiction. It's great. It's grand, and it puts the characters in all these unusual circumstances. But with the Cerritos, you're just sitting down and waiting for poor Ensign Purple Hair to do something, and then for Mariner to screw it up, and then she comes out okay. That is literally every single episode. Every single episode, Mariner gets her way, and poor Ensign Purple Hair gets the shaft every single time. Now, there was one episode that was half funny, and it's they put Ensign Purple Hair and Ensign the Orion nurse girl. Something happens to Ensign Purple Hair where he starts phasing because of a transporter accident. So he's being shipped off like to this basically Starfleet ER, and the Orion has to go because she created this clone dog, but it has like all these powers. So it can like fly, it can morph, it can climb walls, it turns into like this spider thing. And she, being an Orion, has never actually seen a dog from Earth. So she thinks, wow, I created this dog. But the rest of the crew are kind of freaked out by it. And so she gets put on this ER transport as well. And that was actually pretty funny. Because, you know, that was actually good parody of Star Trek. You know, because this crew is always doing, like, I remember there was this episode of Next Generation where Wesley creates these nanites and he actually gives them consciousness. But, you know, so the whole thing with the clone dog who has all these powers and later learns how to talk, that was actually kind of funny because it like parodied something that actually happened in a Star Trek episode. But it's not the way in any of the other Lower Decks episodes. And even the other half of that episode is bad. And what I don't understand is it wasn't received well. It was received poorly. And in fact, they even did a panel for it for the Star Trek online convention, and barely anyone watched it. But it's like CBS and Paramount or Viacom, whatever the company's called, they just want to keep doubling down on all of these bad stories. And I just don't understand this. I really don't. We don't want a grim and gritty Star Trek. We want a Star Trek that is optimistic, that is hopeful. And hopefully we'll get that with Star Trek Strange New Worlds. But I've been defending Strange New Worlds because I do want to see it. I do want to see it. I love the Enterprise. I love stories. Obviously, right, I'm wearing a shirt with the Enterprise on it. It's something that I love looking forward to as a Star Trek fan. But every time I sit down to watch a Lower Decks episode, or Discovery drops another F-bomb, or Picard gets humbled, it's one of those things where it just beats you into submission, and I don't like it. And there won't be a Star Trek Lower Decks Season 2 rant unless I get comments in the comment below requesting it, because I am not putting myself through that again. So if you want me to review Season 2, you have to tell me below in the comments, because otherwise, forget it. I'm going to watch Star Trek Discovery Season 3 and move on with my life. But like I said, comment below, and maybe I'll torture myself some more. We'll see. But in the meantime, stay safe, stay relaxed. Be sure to follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Parler. They're all at Real Jacob Airy. My Facebook page is Author Jacob Airy. Of course, you can check out my website, StudioJakemedia.com, where I have even more reviews and rants and articles. So head over there and check that out. And you can subscribe by email so you can get notified whenever I put up a new article. Once again, don't forget to subscribe here, Studio Jake, like this video, share it out, ring that little bell so you get notifications, and I'll see you next time right here on Studio Jake.